Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Karla Eli Show. I'm your host, Karla Eli, and today we have a very special guest. She's actually one of my early on mentees. We first started working together in the dating world, in the dating scene. She was, looking to find your partner, and then later on through the years, she's like, Karla, I have a passion project, and I want you to be my mentor. And so, thankfully, she had faith and trust in me to really put all of her resources and her mind together with me to build a beautiful community. She's powerful, she's beautiful, and she has a lot of wisdom to share with us on how to reclaim your power. So please welcome in Lily. Hello, Lily.
Hello, Karla. You have been a blessing, and I'm so happy to be here. So this is exciting. I think we're going to have a very empowering conversation. I think a lot of women need to hear just reclaiming one's power and rewriting one's story. So I'm really excited.
Absolutely. And I'm so excited to dive in deeper into the word power in general. And
Yeah.
so I'm really excited to give you this time to talk more about your philosophies, your theories. But before that, I want to go ahead and give our audience a context background on who you are. So please share your occupation, your age, a little bit about you, your relationship status, and all the things that you think would be helpful for us to know to feel closer to you.
Hi. Well, I'm Lily Daniels, and I am the founder of Lilyology. I consider myself to be a personal growth consultant, and I have been doing a lot of speaking around rewriting one's story and reclaiming one's power, going to different places like Eastern Stills Morgue, nonprofits, different mental health professions to talk about women's empowerment in a new perspective. My age is 26 years old, and I am currently in a very loving relationship. And it's so very interesting because, Karla, I have to say, you've helped me on that journey of understanding my non negotiables, understanding my boundaries. And it's really expanded into me just being me and my journey of love and also my journey of empowerment. I am currently in my master's program for clinical mental health counseling. I finished with a bachelor's in psychology some years back. So I just have lived for the studies. I have lived for mental health, mental awareness, but also the empowerment that comes from healing and changing the perspective on how we see the word healing. I believe healing is empowering, and I believe in a society that we've been told that it's kind of weakening. I want to change the perspective on that.
Amazing. Well, I love everything you just said. I'm so happy to see you thriving and so secure and sure with your calling. This is amazing. Okay. I'm so proud of you for all of the growth. And okay, if I start crying in this episode, just know that it's like happy tears, but I'm super emotional and have been super emotional these last couple of weeks. So I apologize in advance, but Lily, I am so proud of you. I don't have words to describe how proud of I am of you to see this journey and this growth for the last 3, 4 years. So extremely proud of you. And with that being said, in your content, you say a lot, take back your power. And what does that mean to you? What does that mean whenever you say take back your power? Because I'm not going to lie, in the beginning of me watching your content, being like, ooh, she's spicy, I was a little bit like taken aback because I'm like, what does that even mean? What does it mean to take back my power? Did I give someone my power in this? And if I did, how can I get it back? So please share.
So I look at taking back your power not from an external point of view, but an internal point of view. So I speak on emotions, limiting beliefs, and thought patterns that are creating your reality. I kind of have realized in a lot of the power content that I see that it's a lot of external aspects. So it's kind of like, how do I look the part? But I want you to be the part. So my concepts are around emotional intelligence, understanding limiting belief patterns, and changing your thoughts so that you can officially rewrite your story and change your life.
I love that. I love that. And so, in your own terms, what does the word just power signify? I know that you touched on it a little bit, but when we think of power, I know you said not something external, but more internal. How did you even get there to think of, you know what, I want people to understand the value that they have with instead of the term self-worth, worth, or value power. Why the word power?
Um, so power to me is just igniting. When you hear it, it's spicy. It's like an ignition. But to me, the reason why I love the word power is because when I hear it, I think of pain and purpose, and I think of people who overcome things. So to me, using that in the healing space and using that in understanding like women in a more nurturing space, I felt like it was taking your pain and turning it into purpose, and that being your power. And this is why I believe in reclaiming your power, taking back your power from things around you that have tried to limit you. So when I'm looking at that word, I don't look at it as just like, I don't know, like a business standpoint. I'm looking at it as an overall transformation, transmuting. I look at it as a transmuting energy, and honestly, what it is to be a leader.
I love that. And so, for our listeners and for the ladies who are listening and watching, how can you recommend for them to take back their power? Like, are there any specific steps for them to take back their power? Because this kind of sounds to me a little bit like the black cat energy, which, there's controversy around that in my personal opinion, but I think that this is, in my perspective, this is a much healthier view of looking at how the black cat moves or black cat energy. So please, how can our listeners take back their power?
Yes. So actually that's so great you said that, the whole black cat energy, because I have my own thoughts about it too. I think that it is lovely, but I think it only leads to a certain point. It is the after effect of the work that you've done before. Black cat energy to me is an overall being. And so people want to be it, but they try to portray it in kind of synthetic forms, I call it, which is very external. And when you learn the internal capabilities, which I go through a 3-step method with a lot of the people I've worked with. It's called listen, evolve, overcome. So the first step that you would take when you're trying to take back your power is full self-awareness, full accountability, and full responsibility. It is no more the fault concept. Like, it might be a lot of people's fault of where you are, but it is your responsibility to change that. So I feel like it is one of those moments when you realize that it is your responsibility. It's a lot of pressure, but it also is a lot of empowerment, because you realize that where you are, you can actually change because the power is yours. So listening to one's life is the first step. Listening to where you are on your journey. This is, the friendships you have, the relationships you have, currently your emotional state, where's your mental awareness, and becoming fully responsible for those aspects. Then evolving, meaning taking what you've listened to and listening to where you want to be and evolving into that person. So this is where resources, mentors, coaches come into perspective, because you now need to build a different support and community for yourself to get yourself out of the limiting beliefs you've had before. The concept of limiting beliefs is simple, but it is hard. We have all experienced it. We've all seen it, where our grandmothers, our grandparents have experienced the same trauma from their parents, and our parents have experienced the same. That is the limiting belief. The limiting belief is passed on. So when it comes to taking your power back, you have to go to the core of it. You have to first take utter responsibility for where you are, so you're no longer looking at the past as your solution, but you're becoming your own savior. You need to evolve into the person you want to be, meaning you are no longer thinking about what you used to be. You are being what you want to be. And then you're going to overcome your situation. And that will be reflected around the sounding boards you see in your life, which would be more relationships and friendships and the people you come and commune with. I'm not about that whole, you meet a lot of people who are about, I've been healing for 3 years and I'm just, staying away from the relationship game. I'm like, no, girl, when are you going to get back in the arena? The only way you can see where you are on your journey is by taking the test. Just like when you go and you go study for a test and study, when you take that test, that's how you know your studying capabilities. How many times have we taken a test and we failed and we thought we studied so well? Yeah, so that's the point. The point is to get back in that arena. So when it comes to taking your power back, I'm not about that whole that's kind of fluff around it. I'm about going through it, action oriented, practical steps, so that you can get to that next level and you can get there a little bit faster with a lot more accomplishment.
Absolutely. And I love this because we have very similar styles. We obviously have our different spiciness. You're so spicy. I love it. We need more women that are spicy. Oh my goodness. whole like, and I'm sure that a lot of my ladies are like, yes, girl, yes, I hear you, I understand you, because a lot of the women that I work with first are the eldest daughters. Secondly, they tend to be either, women of color, which is really interesting to me because I keep gravitating towards women who look like me, sound like me, or also like our culture is very similar, very, very interesting. And so I feel like we need more women who aren't afraid to describe what you just did on taking back your power, because, and in such an eloquent way, by the way, what you just said on the term of power and describing the black cat energy and what you discussed, and something that I wanted to touch on is that network and that community and limiting beliefs. Because I do work with a lot of eldest daughters, you can't imagine a lot of the limiting beliefs that they have that we've dealt with, and that I was very honest in my last conversation on saying, listen, the eldest daughter syndrome, it's real, and you have to learn how to combat it and recognize when you are wrong and recognize when you're repeating the cycle. For me, at least, I know that it's not as frequent, but in the beginning when I got married, I was definitely seeing a lot of my eldest daughter syndrome patterns happen with even within my marriage. And because I married someone who loved me, they were able to call it out and be like, yo, relax. Like, you don't have to be this perfect, like a perfectionist. You don't have to be hyperactive. You don't have to be in survival in this way. Mind you, I had done a lot of previous work before getting married, and it was, some of these patterns were still coming up for me. Like I said, not as frequently now because I've been healing, but also in this very healthy relationship where I'm like, I don't have to be that anymore. I never had to, but because of the limiting beliefs that I had and the limiting beliefs that were placed on me, I didn't even realize I had them. And so I love the way that you said hire or work with mentors and coaches if you don't have that nuclear family to support you. Because if you have a strong nuclear family that loves you and supports you and sees you as an investment, you're not going to have a lot of the struggles that we discuss continuously on the show. Because you have that support system. But for the women who feel alone, this is really when you need to use those resources and those tools. And when social media truly can be a safe space and a healing place for you, is to work with that mentor, participate in group coaching, attend the conferences that you host, and really find out help, because there's solutions to a lot of limiting beliefs that we have. Like, there is a solution. And whenever you get or bump into people that say there's no solution or you have to settle or XYZ thing, yeah, that's because they decided not to take full responsibility of the life that they have. And so they ended up settling. But that doesn't have to be your story. So I love the fact that you said to reclaim. I 100% agree with that. I want to add one last thing before I get your perspective on this, the arena thing. I also don't like it when people say, I'm done dating, or like, I'm done with men. Why am I gonna serve a man and have a family and do all these things when I could just live out my life and like go to Hong Kong or go to different countries and do this? I've healed so much that I don't need a man. And it's like, no, honey, you're still healing. Like, you can't say that you're done healing if you're just being an avoidant and excluding yourself from certain group gatherings. You're not hanging out with your girlfriends. You don't have any girlfriends. You don't have a community. You don't have a relationship. One of the reasons why married couples or married people have a little bit of more credibility with our single counterparts is because when you are married and you've been married for a long time, that tells me a couple of things about you. You know how to communicate with someone. You know how to make sacrifices and compromise. And you know how to play the long-term game. You know how to live with someone else, which is something that maybe a single wouldn't be able to understand. Hence why, because there's this whole phenomenon of why married men get um, hired quicker than unmarried men. And this is one of the reasons: the responsibility part, the accountability part, and the compromise part. And so just because you say you are healed and that you're protecting your peace doesn't mean you have to alienate yourself from society. We want to be a part of society and be the good and the light of society. That's the point of this transformative journey. So please, do you have anything else to add to this?
I think you nailed it right on the head there. Everyone is, I call it sounding boards, but when you're in relationships, it is sounding where you are on your journey. So it's hard for you to see that when you've isolated yourself. And sometimes coping mechanisms are isolation. You're isolating yourself because you're afraid of seeing that. So instead, you just get rid of it all because you don't want to deal with the cycles. You don't want to deal with what's going on. You don't want to change anything. So that's another coping mechanism that kind of tells me a lot about a person, especially when they jump into the concept of all people are bad, like all men I can't be with them, all women they're too catty. That lets me know that there's still some limiting beliefs being placed, but you're now putting a coping mechanism over it, and making it seem okay when truthfully deep down you probably long for those relationships where you can connect with someone. You long for a relationship with other women in a sisterhood, but you're too afraid to go out of your way to do that because you're trying to protect yourself, which we can dive into when we're talking about the shadow self. That's all about protection, protecting that unconscious and subconscious aspect of yourself, and not realizing you're doing it on a conscious level.
Absolutely. And so what are some of the steps that people can like kind of wake up to and be like, oh my gosh, I'm isolating myself? Like, what are some signs? Because something else that I notice is that a lot of these women don't even know that they're doing it. They're on autopilot and they think that that's the correct way to heal based off of how everybody's responding on social media. Because you see these videos of like, I'm no longer going to prioritize a man or dating, whatever. And then the comments are all like, yes, girl, or like, I completely agree, all men are trash or whatever. So it's like unhealed people kind of gaslighting that unhealed person by unhealed people. Like I don't know how to describe it. So how can you even be aware that you have this pattern?
When it comes to these patterns, to me, one of the things I realized when it comes to people who are like isolating themselves from different people, um, is that they, it's again a coping mechanism. So they're trying to, they think detaching from or decentering a man means that they can no longer desire a man, or they can no longer desire, in their case, maybe a woman, or no longer desire having that career choice. This happens in all forms of people's lives. This happens when people say they no longer want to run a business because they have that one downfall. And so now they're like, oh, all business is hard. And they accumulate these negative patterns around that. But what you realize is that um, when it comes to these cycle breakings, you have to ask yourself, no, you don't want to center yourself around, let's say, a man. That's not how you're going to find yourself a healthy relationship. But you can see these cycles when you find yourself in these constant patterns. Um, when it comes to these, what I call wholehearted belief systems. So a wholehearted belief system is like you put people in a whole generalization of community. So one, like all men are bad. That's not true. It's not a true statement. I mean, if all women are bad, are you a bad woman? Or if all men are bad, what about your, is he a bad man? Like you have to start really coming at your belief systems wholeheartedly and starting to kind of face yourself. People are not willing to face themselves. So when it comes to that breaking of a cycle in regards to you're shutting yourself off and you've told yourself that all people are bad, first I would say, where did that start from? Listening to your life, where was the first sign that you have noticed that you came up with that generalization? Was it your past ex? Was it someone who's probably done you dirty, betrayal, cheating? We've all had our experiences, right? So that's where you start first. So that's the generalization. And then I want you to question that belief. I want you to sit down with yourself and say, okay, if all people are bad, or all men are bad, or all relationships, or I don't need to date, I need you to start really looking at yourself and saying, okay, how does that fit? How does that work? I'm not a bad person. So how are all people generalized as a bad person? Has one small part of my life or one small experience actually created a belief system of all experiences I'm going to have? Um, but if we're speaking on in regards to correcting that before it even happens, is first because this is why I'm a little like I tell people to get off of the dating apps a little bit sometimes. And the reason why is because you have all these bad experiences, and it causes that. It causes isolation before you even have went through the healing process. So I tell people earlier on, if you are noticing that you're getting on dating apps, you've been on there months at a time, you're not finding the right partner, you find people ghosting you, you find you're having abandonment situations, you're having situations where you're getting with people they're one way but then they end up turning out being to be another. We have to get your discernment right. Your discernment isn't there. So I tell people to get off of the dating apps, and then now we need to look at the pattern of your cycle. We need to break that cycle. So what have you been noticing you constantly attract? You say you want an emotionally available partner. You say you want this healthy relationship, but you keep attracting non-committable partners and non-emotionally available partners. And you accept them because it's not about what you attract, it's about what you accept, because you will be tested throughout life. That's just the way the journey goes. So, what I've realized is that people kind of, they're like, oh, well, I don't know why I want these two different things. Why I keep going after somebody who isn't emotionally there. It's because on a subconscious aspect, you don't believe you deserve an emotionally available partner. You don't believe you deserve or you're worthy of someone who actually can love and honor you. And so I talk about the shadow and the conscious or the unconscious mind, so I call it subconscious, conscious mind. And I say everyone has a shadow self. It is the things you've been through. It is probably the pains you went through, the traumas, and the undesirable part of yourselves that you probably don't bring up on the first date, right? Those are the parts of yourself you deal with in the back of your mind, but you don't realize they're there. In your mind, you think you cover them up with pretty makeup and a nice outfit, and you have never faced them. You think you go into every dating situation and you have yet to face them. And so what happens is your shadow self is literally manipulating your eyes because it thinks it is the villain, because you won't accept it, and it's so used to being unaccepted, it feels like it has to be mean to everyone. It becomes the villain of your story. And so what happens is the only way to break that cycle is for you to face the quote unquote villain of your story and accept it for where it is. Accept the pains you went through, accept that you went through abandonment, and accept that you deserve to be loved anyway.
Mhm.
And you don't have to go down the path of someone outside of yourself giving your shadow that validation. You get to create the validation for yourself. And so that breaks the cycle. But the only way to see that is to first see the pattern and then ask yourself, oh my goodness, I'm experiencing all this abandonment and non-committable partners. Where in my life have I been uncommitted and abandoned? Hmm. Oh, so I've been uncommitted and abandoned when I was younger. This situation happened in my life. Okay. So what does my shadow need to feel committed and to feel not abandoned? Oh, it needs someone to show up for it every day. It needs someone to trust. And that's you. You show up for it every day. And then you'll notice that you and your shadow work side to side. So when you see that, we know it, we see the walking red flag walking down the street, and you now become consciously aware that he's a walking red flag. You're like, wow, I seem to be a little drawn to that. Oh, that's just my toxic talking. That's just my toxic talking, because I know why I'm drawn to that. I know why I'm drawn to the person who's all in the back, all mysterious, doesn't have any. I know I'm drawn to that, but that's not what I want. That's not what I want for myself, because you have now realized what you truly needed was just for you to love who you were. Just, and that's where we talk about that self love concept, but just to love more and be there and support your shadow self instead of denying it and trying to show up as something that you are not. Which is interesting, Karla. I know you bring up a lot of not talking about the past in regards to relationships. And I totally agree. I 100% agree. But I have realized that if you have a person who talks about the past a lot in their relationships with new partners, to me, that is also a sign that you have yet to reconcile with your past self, because you think you have to explain to this person your past. You think you have to explain it because you think it's made you who you are. So in regards to that, you think it's like you have to explain it to them and all these things because you have yet to accept it within yourself and make it a part of who you are. It's your presentation. And some people might say, oh, so you think I'm going to show up with shame and mistakes as my presentation? No. See, shame is when you have yet to accept your shadow. When you have yet to accept your shadow, it is shame in your life. But when you reconcile with your shadow, shame turns into love. It turns into purpose. It turns into passion. So when you meet someone, you no longer, when you have reconciled with those past aspects of yourself, you don't have to bring up the past relationships and the pains you went through, because you've already learned the lessons that they are showing up present right now. They see it through you. They see the things that you have grabbed from it, that light, and it's showing up right now. What happens is people don't realize it, but when you don't deal with the past and take the power and reclaim the past, you're simply just showing up as shadow. You're just telling them all the negative. That's all you're showing, because you don't see the light. You don't see the light of your own situation. So I think it's so interesting that people bring that up, because it is true. If you're constantly talking about, you haven't yet to haven't rectified it. You haven't rectified your past. So you're showing up constantly. And just constantly trying to spill your shadow, because truthfully on a subconscious level, you don't find yourself worthy.
Absolutely. And that's why I just say it as a blanket statement. Don't share your past. Don't talk about your past. And the thing you said, synthetic, I say cosplaying. You can't cosplay the women that we're describing right now. So whenever I say don't talk about your past, it should ring to you like, oh my gosh, there's something that's me challenging your belief system and being like, but what? That my past is who I am. How am I not going to talk about my past? That's made me who I am. And that's how I get people to either join, working one-on-one with me, or join group coaching and invest more time into listening to the podcast, or into wanting to learn more about how to work within themselves from that blanket statement. So I love the fact that you broke it down as to why I even say that to begin with, because yeah, it takes you to truly accept who you are without having to bring your heart on your sleeve and share and tell everybody your past as to why you've done certain things, because that's you proving yourself. That's you selling yourself. That's you having to like tell the other person this is why the way that I am. And like, because you can't accept yourself, you are asking and needing constant validation from other people. And so I love the way that you broke it down, because yeah, that's exactly what I mean. And another thing is like, you just sound crazy. Like on a more simple level, you sound freaking crazy when you talk about your past and all the things that you've gone through to one person. That's a lot to take in. That's another reason why I say that your boyfriend, husband, fiance shouldn't be your best friend. I get a lot of criticism for that, but it's a boundary that I have personally noticed in my own relationship and in the relationship of the women that I surround myself with that have been married for the last 20, 30 years, where we can all agree your partner is not your best friend. And that's a very thin line there that you have to respect, because he's not a bro, he's not a girl, he's your man and should be respected as that. And people don't understand it. Hence why I have these conversations and I offer, we offer these services so that they can dive in deeper into why it is that this belief system isn't normal for them. And then also catch and realize I am wrong because I keep making the same mistakes over and over again, which leads me to my follow-up question. You talk a lot about dating different people, but it's the same pattern. So like you're dating Sam, but Sam acts a lot like Tyler, and then Tyler acts a lot like Matt. And so can you dive in deeper into that? Because I have a lot of students who come to me and they're like, I keep attracting like the same archetype. Mind you, I do too, ladies. Okay, I attract the same archetype, but like it's good. It's a good archetype. Like I attract like the very masculine provider, healthy, ready to settle down. Let me put a ring on it. I'll buy you a car, I'll buy you the house type of guy. But they're all like they're all the same. It's hilarious. I wish I could show you ladies like my like my past relationships, because you guys would be like, this is hilarious. It's funny. But needless to say, what about if you're consistently seeing the same pattern, that it is that it's like not what you want, not the guy that you want? What would you say there? Like, well, what is the reason? Do you know the reason?
Um, so yeah, just like you say, you have, when you are breaking the cycle, you have, in your case, you are attracting all these healthy partners. You have these same healthy qualities. And you're attracting in your life what you want. So when people are coming up and they're telling me they constantly attract very relationships that don't go anywhere, situationships, it's because truthfully that is what they want. They don't realize they want that because it's built on a limiting belief pattern. And what happens is the way you figure that out is that afterward, I ask them, well, what kind of emotion did it portray in you? And they always hit the same wound in every one of their relationships. So, for instance, if someone is with somebody who's cheating on them constantly, they hit a betrayal wound. They've been betrayed, they've been cheated on. So then that wound in itself, you'll notice that that plays out in all different parts of relationships in some form, whether they're with men who have a wandering eye, or they're with men that happen to, I don't know, leave them for some random woman. It's like all this betrayal wound keeps getting hit. And it's because deep down on a limiting level, they keep bringing that up in their lives because they think that that is what love looks like. So now we have to reframe what love looks like for you. And many times people haven't even seen a healthy relationship. Um, they haven't experienced and seen a healthy relationship. So their mind is misconstrued. They think, oh, I must work for love. That's what love is. Or if he betrays me, I have to go chase this man. That's what love is. Or I have to prove my worth. That's what love is. Love is just not it, not being. They don't see that. So the way you can see it is through your relationships and friendships. Women who constantly get into friend groups that betray them, that is another sign of how you see the level of your how you see yourself as a woman. You are dealing with women that betray you because you betray self. And so you have to start it's kind of like a cycle. They're a sounding board. You're betraying yourself. The sounding board there is trying to show you. And also when people show you who they are, some people say, oh, well, I get in these situations and I feel like it's not my fault. Okay, so you get in these situations and someone betrays you. Why are you still around? Why do you continue to stay with this person who's betrayed you? That is what's showing who you are right there. Why are you with these friends? Why are they still around? You already told me about Jennifer and Denise. They did you dirty. Why are they still in your life? Because you think you deserve that. You continue to deal with this same pattern because you are accepting it in your life. So that is what tells me the difference, also differentiating like, oh, something came in your life, you knew your worth, you got out. You know, you said, no, I'm not dealing with that today. Versus something came in your life, you're still trying to wrap your mind around it. Why are you trying to wrap your mind around somebody ghosting you? There's nothing to wrap your mind around. They didn't respond. So that tells me already, again, these limiting beliefs. You're feeling this chase, you're feeling this rejection. You want to go after them. So I would tell people in regards to breaking the cycle, first of all, you identify the core wound. What is the wound that it keeps hitting? What does it trigger you to do? What is your triggers? Because that's what I mean by taking your power back in your emotions, your thought processes, and limiting beliefs. And then recognizing those limiting beliefs, recognizing what you grew up in, what you saw, and what relationships you were aware of, and how those are playing out in your relationships. You know, a lot of people don't want to be like their past, or they don't want to be like the family they met. And many of times they end up right in the same cycle because they have yet to acknowledge the cycle they're even in. Um, their parents, for instance, get in a relationship and it's built off of lies and mistrust, lack of self-awareness. Their mom doesn't have awareness of herself, and then she thinks that her relationship is going to be that awareness. And so she finds herself lost. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in that same pattern. So I always say to look at the relationships you've always been around and what you've seen in those dynamics, even if they were married, even if you thought, quote unquote, they were healthy, to reframe that, because there are people who are married that are not in healthy relationships. Marriage is not equal healthy relationship. Marriage is a nice aspect to a healthy relationship, and adding that extra commitment there. It helps for building. It says a lot about, you know, where you are on your journey, but that doesn't always equate. Some people stay toxic together, and you have to realize, what did that play out around you, and why that is repeating within your life. So yeah, you can for sure see in someone's life when they haven't broke the cycle and why they're dating that same person, because it keeps hitting the same wound. And once you break it down and dive into what that wound is and that limiting belief behind it, you are able to change the pattern and actually attract healthier partners into your life, because you realize, okay, I'm attracting this betrayal because I believe this is how love is portrayed. I'm going to change my limiting belief around love. I'm going to change my limiting belief around what is a committed partner. What is it to be emotionally available? And really change that concept. And all of a sudden you realize around you, you start seeing all of the healthier or happier relationships you can be in. And then you can get on dating apps and stuff because now you're discernment. You're no longer blinded, because you have the discernment to actually see, because you have bad apples and good apples in every room. But your discernment keeps going to the bad ones. All we have to do is change. I call it changing your compass, because your compass is off. Change your compass so that you're going after the relationships that you now truly want. Now you truly desire somebody who actually doesn't bring a bunch of chaos and anxiety into your life.
Absolutely. And I love what you said on changing your compass because and discernment, because that's something else that I focus on that I think a lot of women are in desperate need right now. But I will be honest with you. So the only problem that I tend to have when it comes to like self-love and really breaking that cycle is that is rooted, I believe, in not that you're doing it, but just the advice that I see a lot that is that is rooted on ego and always the self, right? We're both faith-based women. And so something that I always drive it back to for me that has definitely been able to break a lot of these cycles for my own good, because sometimes you don't even see that it's for your own good to break these cycles because you're addicted to the bad cycles and you're addicted to the survival, the anxiety, the adrenaline, the stress. A lot of women love to be in that cycle and like have, make up intimacy, like have intense um intimacy with their partner because they're obsessed with this toxicity. And so sometimes you don't even recognize it or you don't even want to do it for yourself. And so what has definitely allowed me to let go of a lot of the limiting beliefs that I had, and even though in the moment that I didn't see that it was good for me, God did. Scripture did. Scripture saved me. And so I also want to bring it down to what anybody can do that isn't able to either get, a shadow self book or really understand these concepts, but they understand that Christ loves them and that Christ died for them on the cross. How can they implement, I guess, Christ in this cycle? Because I don't want to tell or share advice and give my ladies advice and being like, you can save yourself. Because you and I both know that that's not the case. Christ is the only reason why we're able to even be saved and to be reclaimed. At least I believe that. Because, yeah, you can break a lot of these limiting beliefs in this cycle, but if it's not rooted in Christ, I truly believe in Christ, in faith, in love, in true love, what you and I both know what love is, it's going to last for a very short amount of time, and it's just going to start all over again if it's not rooted on truly uh what is the term that I'm looking for, truly like shedding that old self of yours, because even Christ asks us to do this. Take, um shed yourself of your past sins and walk in this new life with Christ. Because of Christ and because he, died on the cross for us, you are saved, you are clean, you are made new. And so in all of this, how can we incorporate, Christ? Am I right on this? What's your perspective on this? Because I know that I mentor a lot, and one of the biggest reasons a lot of women like to work with me one-on-one is because I am faith-based. So please, I would love to get your perspective on this.
So yes, I truly believe in God and the divine. That's more of what I kind of lean towards, and I believe it is a very important part in this. Because many of the times the reason we carry shame is because we make it our whole identity. We don't know how to relinquish it. So we think because we did shameful things, it makes us shame. We think because we made mistakes, we are a mistake. We make it our whole identity. And the concept is that it isn't your whole identity. It not even close to your whole identity, and it is bigger than you. Everything you do for yourself is bigger than you. I believe in that. They have all these laws out there, the universal laws, the law of correspondence, and I think it leans on just this concept that things are bigger than you. When you make change within yourself, you change the trajectory of everything around you. So to know that things are bigger than you, you must see yourself as being something outside of you. So that being said, this is where I kind of talk about healing with purpose, because I believe purpose is God. Purpose is your divine gift when there's no identity. So yeah, you think your identity is your purpose. That is not the truth. Your purpose can be pulled out of your identity and is still your purpose. So Me speaking and empowering women is a part of my purpose. That is through God. That is something I've pulled out of identity. The identity would be a personal growth consultant. My identity can change every day, but it doesn't change the purpose that was given to me. And this is why I say healing with purpose instead of just healing, because we see all these healing gurus out there. We see all these different videos. There's so much to digest. Healing with purpose is realizing the concept between the divine and healing,
Mhm.
connecting those two things, connecting those and making them one, because that makes you more powerful. That's why I say to go within, because everything out there is going to change already with what is within. And if you try to change everything outside of yourself, which ends up to a state of control, because change, truthfully, when you try to change things outside of yourself, it is also an indication that you feel no power within, because you feel like you have to control the aspects outside of yourself. But when you trust in God, when you trust in purpose, you trust that when you're within yourself, healing yourself, it is going to be a divine reflection of what everything is going on around you. You realize that you don't have to control everything else, because the power is within you. Why is it within you? Because it is within your purpose. Why is it within your purpose? It's because it is within God. Why is it within God? Because He is of universe. Why is He of universe? I mean, I can go on forever and ever with this. I can go on forever. The full sculpture. That's why I always speak of self, because many of the times we relinquish self so easy. And what we really don't realize is that when we're relinquishing self, we're relinquishing God, because they say God, self, and then we go below that. So when you are not there for yourself, you're not there for God. When you're not aligning into your purpose, you're not there for God. There's a statement that I really love. It's and I, if I'm wrong, because I'm not, like, I haven't read deeply all the Bible, but I have heard a statement that stuck with me, that a woman should be so into the divine God, Christ, that a man must go to Christ to find her.
I haven't
You
read that. I don't think that's biblical. I haven't read it,
I,
but
I
it
don't.
probably is a saying.
Yes. So it's something that stuck with me. So I don't know if it's out of the Bible at all. Because I've heard it, but I believe that is like the truth behind everything. Like, you should be so within the purpose of who you are. And the reason why is because that is where your divinity lies. That is where your power lies. And that a man, the person you're trying to, the things that, it could be bigger than a man. We say a man, but the job you want, the job has to go to the divine to find you. The man you want has to go to the divine to find you. All of these things play a role. And again, this is where we move into black cat energy. There we go. You're no longer chasing things. You're attracting things because you know thyself. Why do you know thyself? Because you're connected to purpose. Connected to purpose means you're also connected to God. That is, like, literally, they all go hand in hand for me. And it is something I kind of, like, I believe in turning the spiritual into practical, because I think we have all these spiritual concepts around us and we don't know how to ground them. We don't know what grounding them is. Some people ground them through scripture. Some people ground them through meditation, prayer. But these are grounding aspects that help us take all these, like, things that are bigger than ourselves and move them into practical steps to change our life. So yeah, healing with purpose, my concept behind that when I speak on healing with purpose, and also reclaiming one power, is the main basis of a few fundamentals. One is realizing that there are big things bigger than yourself, and that the change of yourself changes the trajectory of everything around you.
I love this. I love this. And I agree. I say live in faith, not live with faith, but like in faith, which is very similar to what you're saying, like heal with purpose. I love this. And one of the reasons why, maybe I'll describe it a little bit more on here, why I don't really agree with the black cat energy tactics, or even the term black cat energy. I know that it's fun, it's catty,
Mm-hmm.
but subconsciously, think about subconscious, you see men as dogs because you want him to be a golden retriever, right? And this
Mm-hmm.
is where I ask the ladies who follow me, who listen to me, I'm asking you to be more. I'm asking you to be a woman of value, a woman of faith, a wise woman. Because guess what? These golden retrievers, They ain't the men that you want. Golden retriever vibes, the one that you can manipulate, the one that you could say, I want this, I want that, and he just gives it to you, right? The thing that you think you want. That's not a real man. A real man, a man of value, he's gonna say no. He's playing a long-term game. He's gonna put his own boundaries. He's gonna have self-respect. And so you spoke a little bit on all these things online, or the things that we want of, or of only seeing toxic relationships in our life. Well, I think what we're experiencing right now is a complete opposite of women expecting and thinking, I deserve a healthy relationship. I deserve for my man to give me everything without putting zero investment, which I will agree that I will admit that I think I have added a little bit to this conundrum, because I speak a lot about what my husband does for me, thinking that women know kind of like what they're supposed to do or give in a relationship. And so I'm going to start showing a little bit more of like the sacrifices that I make to be with a healthy man, to be with a provider man. What do I do on a daily basis to attract these healthy men? Because guess what? I always tell my husband, I'm like, listen, one of you, easy. One of me, hard. So, and he knows this, and we both work within the relationship to become the best version of ourselves on a daily basis. Like, it requires work from both parties. And so I guess I need to do more due diligence on the things that I do as a woman, the things that I provide as a woman. I guess the term would be like what I bring to the table, right? Because yes, even though we have inherent value, I also provide a lot of value to my husband on a daily basis, to not only, keep him within the relationship, but also for him to consistently be in love. Like, my husband is in love. And I don't really like to use the term obsessed too loosely, because again, I'm kind of refraining from a lot of these terms that I used to say in the beginning of my career. Just the more that I soak into marriage and God's scripture and building a healthy nuclear family, the more I abstain from using these terms, because I don't want to lead my ladies to like a black hole, which I see now that a lot of gurus out there are, without adding the foundation. And so right now, I think that there's this conundrum of women thinking, I deserve this, I deserve that, I need this, blah, blah, blah. Speaking from a place of hurt and ego, where they've never even experienced these things, but they're expecting them. And so whenever they do go on dates, or whenever they even get a compliment, like, oh, you're so beautiful, their automatic response is like, I know, instead of being graceful with him, being like, thank you. I, with a simple thank you, you already know that you're beautiful. You don't have to state like, oh, I know. Or you don't have to be harsh on these things. You don't have to be harsh with men. You don't have to have these like hide under these high standards, but instead you're in the realm of being, right? And so the reason why I talk a little bit about black cat energy is because if you've been watching my Instagram and my TikTok, you know how I feel about this. There's a blonde lady, not Margarita Nazarenko. I like her stuff. Another blonde lady who I think she created the whole black cat energy and all of these things. Um, I do agree with a lot of the things that she says. However, in my opinion, the black cat energy tactics are tactics, and they're a form of manipulation, versus being a woman of value is having that foundation and knowing your source of worth that requires humbleness. Because yes, even though we do have inherent worth, I believe, and maybe I'm wrong with interpreting this, but I believe that we ourselves, without Christ, we wouldn't have worth, but with Christ we do. And that might be controversial to say, but that requires a level of humbleness, that you see yourself as a servant and not as the master or the teacher that God likes to say, right? But I do think that there needs to be a little bit of self-love for us to be able to invest within ourselves, because God gives us free will. He's never going to ask us to do something that we don't want to do, which is where we have to have a little bit of value within ourselves and love ourselves a little bit more, to recognize that this is bigger than us. I don't know if you want to add anything on here. I said like a lot. I do have another follow-up question, but I don't know if you
Um,
want to add anything.
so yeah, I actually do, because I believe that wholeheartedly. Have realized, and the reason why I went into what I have been doing and creating and helping people reclaim one's power is to change these tactics, this feminine fatale that we see. We have a lot of feminine fatale, dark feminine energy, which again, I have I do believe in like dark feminine energy and understanding the love and light and also the darkness of those aspects. But the reason why is to reframe it, because people do think it's manipulation. They think they can manipulate their ways into healthy relationships, and then they just meet manipulation. When you are synthetic, you meet synthetic partners. When you are a woman of value, you meet a person of value. Why? Because that's what you're drawing and attracting. Because only those synthetic aspects are going to work for synthetic beings, like fake individuals. Why? Because
Mm-hmm.
yeah, both of you are coming up as these two. You both have a mask on. And so it's only going to get so far, too. I mean, many of those situations, I mean, you're getting that back and forth and so-called an obsession, but it's not leading into where you want it to lead. And the reason why is because you have not done the work. You have to do the work. I have created these concepts so that I am able to show that it is sexy to heal. It's sexy. It's sexy to be within your healing phase and journey, and also show up as someone who is not putting up, I call it barriers versus boundaries. People who use a lot of tactics, they have a lot of barriers in life. They are trying to push people out. They're too afraid to open up their heart. So what they do is they don't have any boundaries. They have barriers. So the moment someone gets over that wall, they're stuck there. And all that anxiety and that fear and all those triggers come back. So those people just shut people out. Instead of having boundaries, instead of realizing I can love someone, but when they no longer appreciate my love, I have the boundary and the love enough for myself to walk away. I love you, but I love me more.
Mm-hmm.
That concept. People don't realize, like, and that requires work. That requires you really seeing yourself from all perspectives and realizing that at the end of the day, if someone is choosing not to show up for you or be there for you or mistreat you, because no matter how much work you do on yourself, how much healing you do, you're going to have people that test you every day. That's just the way it works. People are going to test you. And the question is, who are you going to show up as? Are you going to show up as the person who's healed from that and realize, okay, yeah, they tested me, but you know what? I love me more. And I have compassion for this situation. I understand this person for who they are, but I don't have to be a part of this. I get to walk away. I get to take my love and pour it into something else. Because you've poured so much love into yourself that you see it. You're able to distinguish it instead of manipulating your way to in a friendship group or a power dynamic of controlling your relationships. None of that stuff works in the end. Because it's just not.
It's a lie.
It's a it's just a big lie. Like, and some of the stories I hear from men, I hear stories of like, oh, I went on this date and you won't believe what she said. And I'm sitting like, if you have value and love for yourself, why would she do that? Like, I was in shock at first, and then I was like, I thought every woman knew, that no, that's not how you. No, the reason why
No,
you
girl.
know.
No, girl. If I told you.
I was like, oh, I need to talk about this. That's literally where it all, my journey and being able to see people's journeys and also hear some of the stuff they've been through. I'm like, oh no, like this is not what we do.
And you know what? I have a lot more compassion for men now
Yeah.
because now that, well, you know the tea, but like now that I'm looking at it from a perspective of like, oh my gosh, what if I have a baby boy one day? I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna run away from the girl that I'm not gonna be a controlling mama bear, of course not. Thankfully, I think my husband and I were pretty balanced when it comes to this. But thinking from that perspective and seeing all these videos and seeing their attacks on a daily basis, and then also having to kind of have their discernment as well to see which girl is good for them and which one isn't. That's why when you said healing is sexy, absolutely. Listen, a healthy man, a respectful man, a man who has worth and value, he's going to protect what he has, not in regards to finances, okay? Because money comes and goes. That's not, and that should never be a priority. in my
Or
personal opinion, because again, we both have an abundance mindset. So money comes and goes. Anyway, um, but a man, he's going to choose the woman that brings peace. And honey, if you can't provide peace for yourself, what makes you think you're going to attract these men? And not just men, but friends. I run away from toxic women all the time. I'm not going to be your friend, okay? I'm one thing. I'm a mentor. If like you're a toxic woman, you know that you're in survival and you're toxic. I'm only going to be your mentor and an acquaintance. You're going to say hi and bye. I'm not going to sit down with you, break bread with you, and you're not going to be in my close circle. Why? Because I've invested so much time, work, money, effort on building this beautiful life that I have for myself to allow a chaotic Chloe, like the way that I call him, a chaotic Chloe, to come into my life and mess that up. So a lot of these women too that find themselves that are manipulative or that are toxic, that don't even have high standards for themselves and for their own character, they tend to also, and I hate to say it like this, they tend to also gravitate towards men as male friends. Why? Men don't have a lot of high standards when it comes to friendships. Women do. Of course, not all of them, but healthy women at least do. I know that I do, and I know that the women who surround me, they do as well, because again, we understand the power of energy, of intention, of mindset. And if you don't have the same mindset, elevated mindset, you are not going to be invited. Like, I'm sorry, this is just how it is. In the real world, there won't be an invitation. Like, there's not going to be that invitation. So even to access good, healthy networks, it requires you to put in the work. It requires you to put in effort because everybody else has put in effort. Again, I might be wrong on this, and maybe God has to like work within my heart to be a little bit more compassionate, but I definitely have boundaries when in terms of chaotic Chloes, women who want to get close to me but are chaotic themselves. I reserve myself for that because I have something bigger to protect. Again, I'm playing the long-term game. And so ladies, if you find yourself that it's hard for you to attract healthy women or to even have friends, you need to sit down with yourself and be like, okay, why is that reason? Why is it that I can't attract the partner of my dreams? I can't even attract the friends of my dreams. What am I doing wrong? And really sit with yourself and take a hard look, because I can tell you this, I would much rather you be investing in yourself and looking at yourself in your 20s and your 30s than when you're 50 or 60, barely realizing these things, okay? You have a whole lifetime. You have one life to live. How are you going to decide to live it? Like, that's really the question here. You have one life to live. How will you decide to live it, right? I'm going to move on to my next question because I do want to discuss this thing. I want to speak on mother wounds. In this journey of working with women, I have 3 going on to 4 years now working with women in mentorship, and I hear a lot of these stories, and something new that came up for me that you were one of the first actually to mention, that mother wounds existed, because I have a very healthy relationship with my mom. Wasn't always healthy, but now that I'm older and I'm an adult, like my mom and I, we are close. And I'm so thankful that she respected being a mother and being that mother role and not being my best friend ever until I grew up. And now that I'm a woman, I get to see her in a more of a friendship light. And I love my mom and my mom loves me. So I didn't know that there was a lot of mother wounds. So I want to speak on this with you. Um, how do you recommend for someone who struggles with a mother wound to let it go and to heal? Because we can discuss the men all day, friends all day, but it doesn't penetrate the way that a family member does, and especially the way that a mother wound does. And so what would be your recommendation? What have you done personally? Have you personally experienced this? If you're comfortable enough to share vulnerability with the ladies here, because I personally never experienced it. And it's very hard for me to wrap my mind around a mother hurting her own daughter, her own son, and sometimes it's unintentionally, and sometimes it's very intentional. And the very intentional ones hurts me. Whenever women, open up to me and share their story with me, I like look out externally for resources and help because I cannot wrap my mind around this concept. So please share your experiences, share your recommendations, because I know that there's a lot of women who need help right now.
So yeah, the reason why I speak on the mother wound is because I experienced it very deeply growing up. Me and my mom did not have the greatest relationship. But growing up around when I was like 18 years old and younger, and it really played out in my friendships and my sisterhood, which is why I honestly think they equate. One of the ways you can see this is through how you are with other girlfriends. I had noticed I drew a lot of people in that were very jealous. I had a lot of jealous friends around me. And I didn't, and at the time it was kind of like, people are jealous of me. That's all you think. And you can never keep a friendship and all these things. And then I later on realized what was really going on. And it was the mother wound, which, if no one knows what the mother wound is, it is basically the way you have a relationship with your mother is kind of how that mother wound shows up in your life. So if your mother was a very jealous or overpowering mother, you probably have a lot of overpowering, jealous women that show up in your life. Or in your case, you become a very jealous and overpowering woman as well, and it's kind of reflecting on how you see yourself, and also the needs that were not met growing up, or in some cases neglect, in some cases harm, and it shows up in this wound within you, and it's very empty, especially for a woman. It's kind of a disconnect, and it kind of, the main concept around it to me is that you think vulnerability is weakness. That is how it really reflects, and so you become hard, you become mean, you become controlling, and it shows out in all these different ways in your life. And so for me, the way I heal, which now me and my mother have a very loving relationship. I would have never thought in a million and one years that I would be where I am now, but it required so much work, so much awareness, and it required understanding my mother's past. I had to have compassion, which is so hard because the mother wound literally comes at your compassion and rips it to shreds, because that is where you learn compassion, that love you have for one another. When I made a mistake in my household with my mom, I was told that I was a mistake. You know what I'm saying? So those things equated for me. So I didn't have compassion for myself. So to sit there and be not only the bigger person and think to myself, what is the story behind my mom? And realized that she experienced some of the same things that I did, but she was so unaware. She was so unaware to her own pattern. And this is why I talk about breaking the pattern so much. This is about your children's children to come, because what you don't break right now, your children will experience in some form, knowingly or unknowingly. Why? Because you are so busy focused on your past and having all your power back there, fighting all what we call our demons. Our demons, that's what people say. We say all these different concepts, but it's really fighting ourselves. We're fighting ourselves so much we don't even see what's in front of us. We're blind. We're blind at war. And then your children's children is experiencing that blindness, and they're wondering why mom isn't there, why she can't emotionally show up, why she lashes out. It's because she still is in the identity of her being a mistake, of her being shamed, of her being an unfit mother. So it does play out. But the one thing, the biggest thing that I feel will literally shred a mother wound is compassion. Looking at your mom as not your mom, but a person, a human being who makes mistakes, who went through things, that was a baby at one point, was raised by two parents. Like really looking at them and saying, okay, it's not excusing what they've done to you, but it's rather coming to terms that, wow, my mother was a few things away from being honestly me. And that being said, when you come to that awareness and that compassion and come show it from a place of love versus a place of hate, versus a place of anger, versus a place of entitlement, because the truth is your parent is not yours, just like you are not your parents. You both are two individual people, and when you see that on their journey, this is their journey, you are a part of their journey and they are a part of yours. Many times, and I'm speaking up on a concept of family dynamics right now, a lot of people of color experience a lot of enmeshment in their families. They don't understand the roles within their families. A lot of eldest daughters experience that. So sometimes when you're dealing with parents that are emotionally abusive or don't realize, or these toxic cycles when the family dynamics, they feel like there's ownership and power over you. And to a degree, the child feels like there's ownership and power over that parent to show up and to be all of these things. And truthfully, you want your parent to show up as that. Obviously, like you want that love from your mother, you want that love from your father, or what, because there are father wounds as well, a lot of them.
You
And
know, I haven't been dealing with a lot of father wounds. I've been dealing more with mother wounds. It's so interesting. And I think that it's good that I'm dealing with a lot of women who have mother wounds because I have a healthy relationship with my mom that I can share from a different like point of point of view towards healing. Because I get more women who experience more mother wounds. I think this is fascinating, fascinating, and that's one of the things that I tell them. I'm like, listen, the only reason I have every excuse in the book to absolutely dislike and almost hate my mom. Like, she got pregnant when she was 16. She didn't have like an education. She ended up being, at some point a mistress. I ended up seeing her with different partners. I have every excuse in the book to dislike my mom, but on the contrary, I love my mom. And now that I'm a woman, I'm an adult, I'm like, how you chose me? Like, my mom had the option of not choosing me, and she chose me. And so it's looking from it from a place of compassion, how you said, I'm so sorry that I cut you off, but this is just so fascinating to me. This is so fascinating to me because at a very early age, I think I was like maybe 8 or 9 when I started to build consciousness, I started to see both of my parents as human beings, and that really protected my heart instead of viewing them as my parents, because if I viewed them as my parents, it would hurt. It would hurt me if I saw them as just mom and dad. But if I saw them, mom and dad are in their 20s with 4 children, figuring things out. They just got married after like 10 years, basically doing everything backwards, and seeing them from a place of human beings. Like, I'm experiencing my mom's firsts with her and growing up with her. It allowed me to see her from a very like more humanized point of view. However, it's a lot easier to resent, to hate, to like to put a wall and that barrier there because it in a way cope and like move on with your life. However, it's not sustainable. At least for me, it wasn't sustainable. Like, I want my children to have both grandpa and grandma in their life. I want to have a healthy relationship with both of my parents. Um, but this, I think also this only works if your parents also want the same thing with you. In my case, they both do and want to be a part of my life where the doors are open. But if they didn't want to be a part of my life, I have no problem setting that boundary where I respect you as my parents. Thank you for what you did, but I'm not going to forcefully insert myself into your life if you don't want to have a relationship with me. I accept that, and I will find ways to cope and move on with my life. Which in my husband's case, that was the case for him. So please keep sharing your wisdom.
oh yes, no, I love you, and sir, like I appreciate you sharing that, because that ties into what I'm stating here is learning to reparent yourself. Um, Repairing yourself is basically taking the qualities that you were supposed to have from a mom and actually incorporating those into your own life and taking responsibility. So many adults, like you were saying, your husband, he had to basically come to terms with, hey, like, I'm making the best choice for myself. He probably reparented himself. And then from there, was able to incorporate those same things that would probably happen if you just reconciled with your mom or your father or whomever you have that wound with. So reparenting with a mother wound would be self-compassion, self-love, and also nourishing oneself. So you would need to spend a lot of time nourishing yourself. And I'm talking about self-care, not self-maintenance. I talk about two different things. Self-maintenance, you meet a lot of women, they have their nails done, their hair done, they're all did up, but they're still empty inside. They're not happy. They're not in a great place. They don't love themselves. Self-care is internal. It is really sitting with yourself. This is journaling. This is meditation. This is prayer. This requires real inner work. Just like you get a checkup for your body, you need to check up your mind and your soul. This is so important because Many of the times with that mother wound, it is hitting a place of compassion and vulnerability. And many of the times when we're having those moments with our parents, the reason why it's this constant conflict, at least for me and my situation with my mom, I wasn't showing up with vulnerability. I showed up with the same pain and stuff that she was giving back with the same thing. So we were just wall to wall. Until I showed up and I shared with my mom how much not only what she did or what I was going through hurt me, and really share with her how I felt, and really share with her and asked her, like, what was her life story and why, why was she showing up this way? Only to be surprised that when I showed up with vulnerability, she showed up with vulnerability right back.
Mhm.
There we were, both two vulnerable people talking and communicating and healing something that her mom didn't get to do because her mother passed away when she was younger. So here I was having the same conversation with my mom around the same age that her mother passed away, and healing that. It was such a healing trajectory in my life that I didn't know I needed. And it literally shifted all my relationships. It shifted my sisterhood because I realized I used to meet girls, and the moment they did something, I would be done. I would be like, oh no, like, oh, they're not this. I would find things. I used to be like one of like a person that would find things. I was like, oh no, like absolutely not. I had no compassion. I also wasn't showing up with vulnerability. So I was meeting a lot of women who didn't have vulnerable state. They were not showing up vulnerable either. So for women, we are all about emotion. We thrive in that emotional healing. How can you do that if you're not vulnerable with yourself? If you're not showing up like that? So since you're not showing the authenticity, you're getting that right back. And so when I started to show up with compassion, I started to see the girlfriends that I was with and the girlfriends I was attracting as, first of all, people, humans that deserve compassion, that make mistakes, that have fallen short in life. And I started to work through that. I started to also see what it is to be vulnerable and really share one's story with your friends and your sisterhood. See, we always want to spill our stories on different dating partners, but we don't think about how important that is in our actual sisterhood. Having that healing space, that sacred space of really communicating and being like, hey, like this is part of my story. This is part of my life, and these are the things I'm working through, and having those healing conversations. And it literally changed the trajectory of my sisterhood.
Absolutely.
Friendships I built, and also realizing the friendships that are not for me because of that mother wound being taken care of. I started to realize where I was allowing self-hate into my life, where I was allowing someone to reflect self-hatred because I felt that same way with myself. And I felt like, okay, this is what it looks like to be compassionate and loving and nurturing. This is what it looks like to be self-hated, was my nourishment. And it was like I was addicted to that. So I was drawing that into myself to reflect what I felt like should be my reality. um, but when I healed that mother wound, I realized the people in my life that were, you quote unquote say, chaotic Chloe's, people who were just causing chaos, and realizing that it was okay to walk away. I didn't need that in my life because that void was already being filled. I already filled it with love and nourishment and kindness and joy. I was filling it with those healing aspects that I was no longer looking for that empty space and looking outside of myself anymore. So, healing it is reparenting yourself, releasing the illusion of what your parents should be versus what they really are, and seeing them as two people. You have to meet people where they are. And the reality of it, especially as we become adults, we realize this more and more. The people are who they are, and they are not. It is not up to you to make them change. The change happens within them. You can inspire them through the actions you choose to make and through the energy you choose to have, but you cannot change anyone. And so your parents are the same way. They have created these lives, they are on this journey, and it is through them to change, and through their conversations. I say the conversations you have with God, that is a conversation for them and God, right? Those are the conversations that are supposed to be built through them. But it is your choice to inspire and to show up as the best version of yourself and to have those conversations. Because like we stated, yeah, right now you can cut your parent off right now and be done, right? let let that wound be there and be like, I'm just not gonna, whatever. I don't need sisters, I don't need friends, I don't need any of that, I don't need anyone. Okay, But the truth is, that's not the reality. You need people. We need people. We're human. We're social. But also, when you have a child, when you choose to bring someone into this world, that will be reflected through you again. All that hate, all those feelings, all those emotions, what it is to be a mother, you're going to be staring that child right in the eyes. You're going to be staring yourself right in the eyes. So, that being said, it is bigger than you. When you choose to face the mother wound and the father wound, it not only changes the trajectory of your life and your relationships, because many of the times those dynamics have been pushed on. So all you've seen is the mother wound in your life from all the women around you. But when you choose to change that, you're going to ruffle some feathers. It's going to be some hard conversations. Everyone's not going to be in the hype of the moment. It's going to be some heated moments. You step away, you come back. You step away and you come back, because what you're doing right now is expanding. Feminine energy is expanding. Healing is expanding. Women, we expand things. So when you go into these spaces and you heal, you're expanding their area. You're expanding their frequency. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable, of course, but you just keep going in and you try to expand. You're not trying to change them, you're expanding yourself through healing conversations, through being vulnerable, through showing up, through emotional intelligence, through learning more about yourself. That is expansion. And then all of a sudden, you realize one or two things happen. Either people don't accept that and they move right out of your life because you've expanded so much that you push them right out, or people actually expand with you and they want to know how you started expanding in the first place. So yes, the mother wound comes up a lot with the people I work with, especially when it comes to friendships. A lot of people and women need help within their friendship life. They go through a lot of different betrayals, or they wonder why they can't keep friendships or why they can't have those hard conversations. And I always ask them, what's your relationship with your mother? And long and behold, it's normally, oh, we don't get along right now, or I don't talk to her right now, or I'm not, or I've been through this X, Y, and Z, or she's not even in my life. Um, and we start to have those hard conversations of, maybe this is a reflection of the pains that you're going through your parental figure, and having that conversation. So yeah, it's a really big thing. It's becoming more prominent. It is definitely taught through psychology. And yeah, I like to bring it into my practices and bring a very spiritual to practical form to it, so that people can understand that a lot of people go through it, but the question is, how are we going to heal from it?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I love the fact that you asked your mom her own story, because that's something that I was starting to do now that my grandma is still alive. And I keep asking her questions about her mom, because I have a lot of questions as to like, why am I the way that I am? Why am I so happy all the time? Why am I so like, obviously I look at myself from a good angle, like a good perspective, but like also, why do I get stuck on certain things? And I want to understand myself a lot more, because obviously there's a lot of spiritual and you can break a lot of cycles and stuff, but like, we have to look at our DNA and our genes. Oh, there's certain genes in us that are prominent. Like me and my sister, we have the only difference between us, same mom, different dad, completely different. Okay. And I say this often. There are times where I see her face expressions and her move her face and have like the same mimics as my stepsister, because they have the same dad. And it's crazy how blood calls. It is insane. I'm like, whenever she like does something, I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys haven't seen each other in a while, and you kind of sound like her, kind of act like her, and are moving your face and moving your stuff a little bit like our stepsister. That is wild, because they have the same father figure, and or like the same dad. And me and my brother were very much similar in the way that we're both kind of emotionally reserved, a little bit more dry. We're a little bit more logical. We're happier. We're a little bit more like my sister's like really happy. I don't want to paint her in this like way, but we're definitely different than my sister. And the only difference was our father. And I do feel like the gene pool matters a lot. And when I always say this, like, you have to think about when you're dating someone, you get married, like that person's genes and their genealogy is going to be in your baby as well. Like, it's going to make up their DNA. So I started asking a lot of questions to my grandma most recently, and I'm working on creating like different journals and scrapbooks so that we never forget our story, starting with me, because I don't have that in my family, where there's like hand me downs or like story backgrounds. Like, there's none of that. After my grandma and after my great grandma, I don't know where our line goes. And so I really want to break that with me. And I started to ask my grandma the hard questions because she was in a domestic violence relationship with an alcoholic. She did experience a lot of these things. And whenever I think about my life and myself, I'm like, my grandma went through hell and back to be where I am. So absolutely not. Hell no, I'm not going to tolerate like someone abusive or someone toxic in my life because the women before me made so many sacrifices for me to be here. And that's how I view my life, right? And so fortunately, my grandma, my sister, and my mom and I were really tight. Like we're close. I talk to my grandma and my mom on a daily basis. And so it's really weird to me to whenever women are like, yeah, I'm not like that with my mom. Like it's crazy. Like it's crazy to me. I'm like, wait, what? Like what? But it's understandable because not everybody comes from a place of compassion. Not everybody's ready to have those hard conversations, to have those heartbreaks. Because when you're healing and when you're working with someone else, it hurts sometimes. It hurts and it opens things up that you didn't even know that were there. And you're kind of left like, kind of sad, but it's up to you to kind of like get rid of those emotions and be like, okay, this happened, I accept it, but that doesn't mean that I have to stay within that emotion or keep that emotion. I can let it go, process it, and let it go. People don't, people don't realize that, but that's why we're here to, let you ladies know, yes, you can, and yes, you can move on and heal and become the best version of yourself and really recreate the life that God had intended for you. Because who benefits from us being in survival, from us being in chaos, from us being broken? Who benefits from all these things? There's only one person that I can think of that benefits from all these things. And obviously, this person also, and this entity also, within a lot of truth, slides in a lot of lies. Hence why I don't like the law of attraction. I don't like these black cat energy tactics because there's a lot of truth in there with a lot of little white lies, which can make us believe that those systems work. And so, how did I get to this? I got so fired up. I just hate lies. Like I'm very like hot or cold, and especially right now with this transition in my life, I'm seeing things from a bigger perspective where I'm like, all of this work that I've invested and put into my life is coming to fruition. And I'm so thankful that I made all the sacrifices that I did because you and I can both agree it is not easy to break cycles. And sometimes you feel alone. Sometimes you feel alone and you have to know like you were never alone. And I know you have a lot to say on this because I know that you and I were both kind of like the pioneers of our family doing something first, but it just takes one person to turn it into like either a tradition or to a specific standard. Because now the standard for my family is you don't leave the house until you're married, you don't have intimacy before you are married. And that wasn't the case before my mom. Like my mom did make a lot of mistakes out of her ignorance, and that's why I see her like she was 16, like going back and seeing it from her perspective, living in a third world country and not having the systems or resources the way that we do. I have a lot of compassion for her. And so, but because I set the standard, and I'm so excited to see what my children will set the standard and what the standard will be for them, but it has to start somewhere. This chaos and survival needs to end, and I chose that it ended with me. And so this leads me to my next question, but I don't know if you have anything to add, Lily.
Yeah, I definitely that part right there, it ends with you. And I mean, I'm not trying to get into the movie and book right now. It ends with us. I don't know if you've seen that, but at literally that moment when she's sitting in the room and she's holding her child, she says, "This ends with us. This ends with me." And when you come to that realization in life, that you can have the choice. Yeah, it could be lonely at times, especially when you're the first, because you're roughing all the feathers. You're the one going through it and you're creating a path. But when you realize how priceless it is and how many other people you have to support you along this, like you have me, you have Karla, like you have people that can help you along the journey to building this, to creating this, to breaking this as support and giving you certain steps along the way so you're not alone, not as lonely along the way. But it's a real thing. It changes the trajectory and it also builds strength because I've learned more about my ancestral. I've recently met family from my past. I learned more about my mom's mother who was adopted, and it changed the way I saw things. I mean, it made me look at my life in a whole new way and the power I have in life. and why it is so important to not only reclaim your power, but be okay rewriting your story. When we have a book, we have chapters in that book, right? And for some reason, we get stuck on one chapter and we think that's it. All right, close book. That's my whole story. No, just like we read a book and we root for that character who's probably been through the trenches, who probably didn't have any support, probably was going to hunt for her own food. Yeah, that person right there ends up at the end in some castle with a loving relationship and family. We root for her. It's a reason we root for her because we see that same thing within ourselves. And we know we have within us the power to be able to not only turn that pain and all of that struggle into something that is really great and honestly can change our children's children. And I believe that wholeheartedly. So to me, we have to start looking at our lives as a whole book and all of the chapters in our life, realizing we have the power to change wherever we are on our journey, no matter how many things we have done. I know that it sounds very like hard to believe because you kind of are faced with all of these actions you've made and people telling you who your identity is, but that doesn't make you who you are. And that's a conversation you have to have with God, because the truth is you're not based on what other people see of you. That's not how the reality of it. It's about how you see you. And that's how you represent you. And you making that change within yourself is going to either get rid of people who maybe only see you one way and probably change your whole community. But at the end of the day, the world is going to see you in a new light because you see yourself in a new light and you're showing up in a new light. So, but you have to believe you can do that within yourself. And that requires you going through those processes. And like we said, realizing the importance of breaking the cycle, because it's bigger than you.
And so, how can someone even learn to love themselves? Because I get this a lot. Like, how can I even love myself, right? Or how to do something. And I hate whenever I get this question because I'm like, girl, is it going to require like 3 days of us just talking nonstop and like really putting it into practice so that we can embody the woman that we were called to be? But what are like the first steps to even start loving yourself?
Um, so I think that a lot of people mix self-love with self-like. They think because they have made mistakes, they don't like parts of what they do and how they do things, that equates to them not being able to love themselves. And that is not the same. And the perfect example is I tell them to think about someone they love, like their siblings. The best way to describe this is your siblings do things all the time you don't possibly like or aren't the best choices. But if your sibling called you up right now and said, I need something, I need help, you would be right there like that. That's how you have to be for yourself. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to fall down. You're going to fall short. It doesn't matter how much healing, how many self-help books you have read. There are going to be things on your journey you've never encountered and you have to work through. That is the part of growth. What doesn't grow, the other part of that half, what doesn't grow normally doesn't, yeah, is dead. So that being said, you have to grow in life. So to me, when it comes to, I kind of just lost part of my train of thought. I think it was
When
like,
it like when it comes to loving yourself,
yes,
knowing that you're going to be there for your
yes.
sibling and kind of seeing it the same way. What
Yeah.
else are you saying?
So when it comes to loving yourself, when you look at the love you have for others, it was a perfect reflection of how you should see that within yourself. Because I'm always about, it's hard to tell somebody go love yourself, but it's easier to visually show them like how they've done it through other people. So for instance, if you have been in a relationship, how you love someone else goes in stages. The first is rose colored glasses. And we know this so well. You go around, you're like, I love myself, all the affirmations. Yeah. And then second stage, you start to see some of your flaws. Yep. Mm-hmm. Oh, I love myself. And then all of a sudden Stacy comes along and you're pissed off, or you start reacting to something instead of responding to something, or you end up going on some date and you didn't respond the way you wanted, or you went back to Jack's house after you told yourself you were not seeing him ever again. And so all of these little things are things you may not like. You may not like the way your body looks. You may not like the way you see yourself in the mirror. Excuse if you hear any noises. But you may not like the way your body looks in certain forms and this and that, right? But you still choose to love yourself anyway. You still choose to show up in that state and realize that even if you don't change those aspects of yourself, that you are still worthy of love, right? But this is a beautiful part about love, and I call this the fourth step that you only can find through self. Only can find through self, through God, through a bigger part of yourself. It's a higher race than you looking at relationship. This fourth step is realizing through love that love is change. When you love yourself so much, when you have learned to love yourself on your journey, you've realized that like is not love. So you may not like all the aspects of yourself, but you choose to love yourself anyway. And then you realize that you love yourself enough to change. Because love is transformative. And how we know love is transformative and love doesn't just, oh, I love myself, I'm just going to stay the same, right? We know love is transformative because when you have love for your child, it transforms. When you have a romantic partner, it transforms into romance. Love transforms all the time. It changes all the time. It is not a one size. So you love yourself enough to change so that you meet the ideal version of you versus the version of you that's right here. Love wants you to be that. So the way I show that is through that visualization and realizing, okay, let's sit down and write out, what are the parts of yourself you don't like? Let's talk about it. You're running away from that so much. You're trying to cover it up. Okay, so you're wondering why you can't love yourself. You're like, why can't I love myself? Let's sit down and talk about the parts you don't like. Okay, and then I want you to sit down and talk about the parts you do like about yourself. And then I want you to sit down and ask yourself, or write out, because you might not think you deserve love at the time, but I want you to write out, even though I don't like my body, I choose to love me anyway. Even though I don't like where I am in life, I choose to love me anyway. And I want you to constantly look at that and look at that distinguishment. I want you to see that for yourself, like and love. I want you to see it because that's going to make you realize, like, wait a minute, I get to show up for myself. Because if no one's going to do it, I got to do it I have to do it, right? It's kind of like, it's bigger than you, especially for some people who, to me, aren't connected to like God. Like they don't feel like they're connected to God. Self-love definitely to me opens up a level of you being connected to God in a different way, because God sees you for who you are. He doesn't see you for the lies you try to show. He doesn't see you for the mask you put up every morning. He loves you for who you are right now on your journey. And so when you put up all these masks and stuff like that, you're doing that to yourself also on your self-love journey. And the truth is, it's you don't need to put up a mask to love yourself. Just like God doesn't have to put you know, you don't need to put up this facade or a lie to love yourself, because God sees through that too. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like when you see the self-love is also a connection to God, you realize how that connection goes hand in hand, and why it's also important to kind of have an awareness of self and your divinity and stuff like that, because it's kind of bigger than you, but also realizing that you are not the things you've done. You are not the things you've been through. You are you. And that is perfectly fine. And also loving yourself through that process. But I do love to use an equation that you put up this facade. A lot of people on their journey, especially if they are Christians, or if they think these distinguishments between their religion and themselves. They think they have to put up a facade. But the truth is, if God does see all, and he sees all parts of you, there's no facade you can put up. So you can try to lie all you want and lie to yourself. But the truth is, and the matter of fact of it all is that love is choosing to love yourself where you are in the true relationship you're going to make for yourself where you are, and also loving yourself enough to change. And those step processes are just basically being aware that your like is not your love. And what you may not like about yourself, you can still choose to love within yourself.
Yeah, like for example, there's a lot of people that are family to me that I love them, but I don't like them. Like, I'll be honest, there's a lot of people that I'm like, I love you, but gosh, I do not like you. And
Yeah.
it's kind of like the same way within yourself sometimes. It's like, I do not like myself. I do not like myself right now, but I love myself enough to know that this is temporary. And this is usually what happens during survival season. I think you can look at yourself in the mirror, not even know who you are and not like yourself, but you know that it's temporary. So you keep, going through the motions and keep doing what you need to do. Um, Hence why I'm going to be offering like a group coaching experience this month of March, going through these processes and like these mindsets of like, you're not crazy during this season. You just need to understand that it's a season of your life and view it as that. And just as like whenever you're thriving, that's also a season. You're not always going to be at the top. Like you're going to be sometimes stagnant, sometimes you're going to be low, and then you're going to go back up again. And that's just part of life, but it's acknowledging that you only have one life to live. That's the motto that I think I have for myself and that my family has for themselves, is like, we only were given one opportunity. How are you going to use it? How are you going to live it? How are you going to experience it? Because it's going to require the same amount of effort to be sad, depressed, ugly, if you will, and like all of these things negatively, think negatively, not allow your mind to work for you, but against you. It's going to take the same amount of energy if you did the complete opposite. If you loved yourself, if you were positive, if you were happy, if you resonated in love, if you lived in faith, it's going to require the same amount of energy. Why not just focus all of your being with the good so that you can have a good life? And that good life might look differently, right? Not everybody's good life is going to look the same. Not everybody's calling is the same. Not everybody's purpose is the same. It's going to be different. And if it is the same calling, like me and Lily here, we have a similar calling of working with women and working, and being a voice for women who want to work within themselves, but we show up for it differently. We show up for it differently in our own essence, in our own styles, in our own verbiage. And that's because even though we have the same calling, we are different because we know who we are. And right now, we're seeing a lot of on the internet, you're seeing a lot of the same people doing the same thing, trying on the same thing, wearing the same thing, speaking the same way, because they don't know who they are. They think that they have to pretend to be something that they are not to fit in, regardless of what a lot of people say. I don't want to fit in, I don't have friends, blah, blah, blah. No, we're just showing up the same way that people before us have, but now we have this thing called the internet that we're showing our insecurities through there by being the same. And so what Lily and I ask you to do is to accept who you are for you, with your differences, with your, dislikes and likes, but choose who you are first. Because let me tell you something, you want to attract women like Lily and I in your friend group, be yourself, be authentically you, with your mess, with your mistakes, not in a chaotic way, but like accept who you are, get your life together, and attracting a friend like Lily and I is going to be easy, and it's going to be second nature because we will be attracted to you. I'm attracted to women who have a story. I'm always attracted to women who have a story and who have a backbone, okay? I don't like weak women. I don't like weak women. I like strong women, strong feminine women who are healthy and who know like who they are and who own it. That's what I'm attracted to. I don't like weak women. I also don't like negative women, okay? Let me tell you right now, I don't like negative women. So if you want to attract women and friendships that, surround you and inspire you and are like literally a fresh, like what is it? A breath of fresh air. You need to invest in yourself and work within you so that you can attract women like us. Because guess what? Even though we don't give out invitations to chaotic Chloe's, our doors are always open for a new sister, for a new face, a face who wants to level up and be the best version of themselves on a daily basis. Because like I said, sisterhood and being and having a good community of women around you is what is going to keep you from getting and going crazy to become that best friend with your partner. Your partner is not supposed to know all of the emotions that you go through on a daily basis, all of those mood swings. No, that's why you have girlfriends. There's a balance because we thrive whenever we open up and share our emotions and share every single detail and thought of our life, because we like that. We like knowing that as women, but men don't work the same way as women. And demonizing men is like a whole other topic, but you need girlfriends, like you need friendships, and that requires time, effort, and investment. Okay, if you're not willing to put any of those three things of time and effort, then you're not going to go anywhere. And so choose you is what we're saying. Choose to love yourself, because you will not regret it. It is priceless. And with that being said, thank you so much, Lily, for being a part of the Karla Eli show. And maybe we'll have a part 2, because I feel like we just touched the surface here, and we'll discuss more maybe in April. We'll see the feedback that we get in the comments. But thank you so much for being here, Lily.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a very amazing conversation. And yeah, I would love to come back. I have so many things to touch on. We've spoke on so many different subjects. And I just think this is a really big conversation that people really need right now, especially women. I think community and understanding not only our faith, understanding our purpose, but understanding the power we hold in life. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, and thank you so much. And with that being said, ladies, we'll see you on the next one.